Thanks for coming back today. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and it's very important in the scheme of looking at improving your health, and that's improving your emotional health. And it's so important to take care of your emotional health because, as you probably have read or heard about from other speakers, when you don't take care of your emotional health, that'll eventually turn into problems with your physical health. And often what we see, and a lot of the mainstream medical people will attest to this, because more and more health practitioners, namely physicians, are under the impression these days that when someone hasn't dealt with an emotional health issue, they will eventually have a health issue, a physical health issue. And then it gets a little more complicated to treat that illness because they're holding on to this emotional baggage, so to speak, and one needs to deal with these things. So how do you deal with your emotional baggage, I guess, would be the next question. And I guess the first thing would be that you have to identify that, in fact, you do have this emotional baggage. And when I have one of my clients come in who presents with an addiction issue, one of the first things I say to them is that this addiction of theirs is actually a blessing. And hearing that, you know, most of you there are going, how can possibly an addiction to cocaine or heroin or alcohol or gambling be a blessing? Well, here's the story, is that as part of your treatment or recovery, if you will, from those debilitating diseases is in fact that it gives you an opportunity to take a look at what emotional baggage you do have. Because you're not going to recover from the addictions if you don't take a look at what other baggage you're carrying around that perhaps led you to taking the substance or led you to that addictive behavior, whether it's shopping or other things that you might be addicted to. Now, there basically are some ways and means that one finds more useful in dealing with those things. Is once you identify that there's an emotional trigger, then you could do something about it. You could, prepare yourself every day to walk out the door and deal with, okay, I'm not going to be triggered by that emotional thing. And then if by chance you get taken by surprise and that emotional trigger, say for sake of argument, you haven't done well with people that have put you down. And then somebody in your day has put you down for whatever reason. Maybe not, they didn't do it maliciously, or maybe they did do it maliciously, but it has triggered you. So you got to be understanding that in fact you've been triggered. Because if you haven't even identified that you've been triggered by what has been said to you, you don't really realize that now you're reacting to it. So if you identify that in fact that you've been triggered around an emotional issue, now you can respond. So in other words, there's a reaction, which is an unthought, something that you haven't determined that you've been triggered by, and now you're responding. No, you're reacting to it. Somebody does this, it's sort of like a tit for tat kind of thing, where this has happened to you, now you're going to react by doing this and this. What I'm suggesting to you, when you identify that in fact you've been triggered and you stop, give yourself enough time to develop a course of action, and you almost like plan out your reaction, that's called a response. A clear cognitive response where you say, okay, I'm not going to let this thing bother me. I've been triggered. I'm going to remain cool. I'm going to maybe take a little time out from this situation, even momentarily, a few seconds to do some deep breathing or whatever technique you want to use. And then you come back and you respond. You might say, well, I got to go to the washroom. I got to end this meeting early. I've got something else going on. But you remove yourself from the situation for a little bit of time. Even if you can't leave the situation, at least leave the situation in your mind and do some deep breathing, do a little visualization that puts you in a place maybe where you weren't triggered, and you collect yourself, and then you make a response back that is appropriate to the situation, that doesn't hurt you and doesn't hurt the other person. So in other words, you're perceiving that I'm okay and you're okay, and here's the response I'm going to give you. There are some things that I would recommend that people do at this point when they want to do something about their emotional health. And one thing that would be very useful is to keep track or identify or assess exactly what are things that are being triggered in you. What are your emotional triggers? So you need to take some time when you're not stressed out by writing down what things in your week have triggered you. So then the following week you can do something about it when you get triggered again and you haven't responded as well as you had hoped. So you have to take the time to write those things down. And then you have to write down as well with each one item what you might want to do better the next time. Whether you're going to be doing some visualization, whether you're doing some meditation of some kind, whether it's deep breathing, you may have to look into what deep breathing is all about. You might want to basically almost on a, sometimes I recommend that you do it by minute basis, is identify how you're doing in your emotional health and give yourself a score from 1 to 10, with 1 being you're not being triggered by anything today, and 10 being that you're being triggered all kinds of ways. So if you're at an 8 or a 9 on that emotional scale, then you might even want to excuse yourself from stressful situations that you know might trigger you. Or if you have to go into a situation where you anticipate being triggered, you'll have a game plan on how you're going to respond even before you get triggered. So if you're an 8 on being put down, for example, then you're going to, you've been put down several times that day, and now you know you're going into another meeting, or you're going into a situation where you have to have an encounter with a colleague or a superior that's going to put you down in some way. You've got some planned response on how you're going to deal with it, so you just don't go over the top in terms of your reaction and get yourself fired or cause yourself some harm. So it's important that you journal as much as you can, even post-reacting to that situation. Okay, what did I do good today or this hour in terms of dealing with that very difficult situation? Little pointers, nobody's going to be reading this, nobody's going to check your spelling. Just make some quick notes for yourself so you can identify those things. And sometimes you might even want to make a little list at home of things that you feel you do very well, and review that list with yourself on a regular basis before you start your day, and then perhaps at the end of your day. You may even want to put things in your pocket in a little notepad on quick things that you want to remember that you have to do that day in regards to your emotional health. There are a lot of good meditation classes out there. It's important that one learns how to meditate, how to do some exercises in learning how to deal with this emotional stress, if you will. And another example might be learning how to do Qigong or Tai Chi. These are very good ways of staying fit, as well as learning how to respond in a more appropriate way to life stresses. So thanks for joining us today, and look forward to talking to you on another topic another day.